Hello everyone, welcome to Programming with Mosh. My name is Mosh Hamedani, and in this video I'm going to talk about events and delegates in C#. I have noticed that a lot of developers starting with C# find the concept of events and delegates a little bit confusing. In fact, I was one of them when I was starting out. So I decided to create this video for you, and I hope by the end of watching this video, you will have a good and in-depth understanding of events and delegates, why we need them, how to use them, and how to create them. So let's get started. So what are events and why do we need them? Well, events is a mechanism for communication between objects. That means when something happens inside an object, it can notify other objects about that. Why do we need that? Because it can help building loosely coupled applications. What is loosely coupled applications? That means an application that its components or classes are not tightly coupled together. A loosely coupled application is easy to extend without breaking or changing one or more of its existing capabilities. Let me show you an example of this in the code. So take a look at this class. This is a video encoder class with one method called encode, which encodes the video that is passed to it. For simplicity, I've gotten rid of the encoding logic. But look at the last line. Here, when the encoding is finished, we use the mail service to send a mail message to the person that owns the video. Now, there is nothing wrong with this code, but let's say in the future, there is a scenario and we may want to send a text message to the video owner. So what we need to do is to go ahead and add this extra line of code to this method. Now, again, this is for simplicity. In a real world scenario, there could be a few more lines of code. Now, the problem here is because we add this extra line of code here, that encode method is changed, which means it has to be recompiled, which means the video encoder class also has to be recompiled, which means any other classes that are dependent on this video encoder have to be recompiled and redeployed. So as software engineers, we want to reduce this problem. We want to design our application such that when we want to change the application, that change has minimal impact on the overall application. The problem here with this code is that by adding that extra line, we may accidentally break something along the way. Now, we can use events to resolve this problem. Take a look at this picture here. We can have our video encoder class to publish an event called video encoded and have the mail service class to subscribe to that. In this case, we refer to video encoder as a publisher or an event sender, and mail service is a subscriber or an event receiver. Now, what is interesting about this picture? That video encoder knows absolutely nothing about mail service, which means in the future, if we want to extend our application and add the capability to send a text message when the video is encoded, we can simply create a new class called message service and have it subscribe to that video encoded event of the video encoder. So basically, the video encoder does not need to be recompiled and redeployed, and we simply extend the application by adding a new class. So this reduces the impact on the application. Ideally, if we could extend our applications by simply adding new classes, the compilation time would be reduced and application could be redeployed without breaking things along the way. Now let's take a look at what the code would look like if we want to implement this eventing mechanism between these classes. So here is our video encoder class again. We have the encode method as before with the encoding logic. At the end, instead of directly making a call to the mail service, which we had before, we simply call a method called onVideoEncoded. Don't worry about that method, I will cover it shortly, but the purpose of this method is to simply notify the subscribers. Video encoder knows absolutely nothing about the mail service or the message service. They can come later, and we can add more subscribers without changing anything in this code. Now back to our picture, you might be wondering, how does the video encoder notify its subscribers? Well, for video encoder to notify its subscribers, it needs to send a message to them. In practical C# terms, that means invoking a method in the subscriber. But how does the video encoder know what method to call? For that to happen, we need an agreement or a contract between these publishers and subscribers. So this agreement is something that both the publisher and subscriber agree upon. That is a method with a specific signature. Take a look at this method. So this method is void. It has two parameters, which the first one is an object and the second one is an event args. And this is a very typical implementation of a method in the subscriber. We often call these methods event handlers. And that's the method that is called by the publisher when the event is raised. So that means, back in our picture here, we need to have a method like that in mail service and message service. So when the video encoder wants to raise that event, it's going to call these methods. Now I need to clarify something here. Again, video encoder does not know about the existence of mail service or message service. It knows absolutely nothing about them. It's decoupled from them. All it knows is a method, nothing else. Now, how do we tell video encoder what method to call? That's when a delegate comes in. So a delegate is basically an agreement or a contract between publisher and subscriber. And it determines the signature of the event handler method in the subscriber. So back in our picture here, we can have a delegate that determines when a video is encoded and we want to notify subscribers, we should have a method that is void with these parameters. The name doesn't matter, but the signature is important. So now that you have a basic understanding of events and delegates, let's take a look at a piece of code and see how to create an event and a delegate. So here I've created a very simple console application. Let me walk you through the classes we've got here. First, we've got a video class, which is a very basic class with a simple property for the title of that video. We also have that video encoder that you saw earlier in the slides. So it has one encode method that gets the video. First, it logs a message on the console saying we are encoding the video. And just to simulate an encoding process, I used thread.sleep to delay the application for a period of 3 seconds. In the program CS, in the main method, first we instantiate the video here. Then we instantiate a video encoder. And finally, we call the encode method passing the video object. So very basic. Let me run the application now. So with Control and F5. Okay, we got the message encoding video, and notice there was a 3-second delay before we saw the press any key to continue. Let me run it again. So waiting, 1, 2, 3. There you go. Okay, now we want to implement an event in the video encoder such that when the encoding is finished, it notifies anyone who is interested in that event. Now, to give this class the ability to publish an event, there are 3 steps we need to follow. First, we need to define a delegate. That is the contract or the agreement between the publisher and the subscriber. So a delegate determines the signature of the method in the subscriber that will be called when the publisher, in this case video encoder, publishes an event. Second, we need to define an event based on that delegate. And third, we need to raise or publish the event. So let's go ahead and implement each of these steps here. To define or declare a delegate, we start with public because we want it to be accessible anywhere. Then we use the keyword delegate. Now imagine you're declaring a method. To declare a method, we need to specify the return type, give it a name and parameters. And this method would be actually the event handler and the subscribers. So if I want to declare an event, I would say void. I would give it a name, video encoded event handler. Then parameters, typically in .NET, we have this convention that we want the first parameter of the event handler to be an object. And that is the source of the event or the class that is publishing or sending the event. And the second parameter is an event args, which is basically any additional data we want to send with the event. So let's review up to this point. We are declaring a delegate, which actually holds a reference to a function that looks like this. So that function or method is void. It has two parameters. The first one, typically in .NET, should be of type object, which is the source of the event. And the second parameter is event args, which includes any additional data about the event. Now, how did they come up with this name? In .NET, we have this convention that we say if the name of our event is going to be video encoded, we use that and then append event handler as the name of the delegate. So that is our first step, define a delegate. Now we need to define an event based on that delegate. So we start with public event. This event should be based on that delegate. So we use video encoded event handler. Video encoded event handler and give it a name. So video encoded. Note that I use the past tense form here to indicate that something has happened and finished. Sometimes in .NET you may see an event referring to present tense, like saying video encoding. In that case, that event should be fired or published before the encoding is started. So here we just use the past tense. So the second step is done. We define an event called video encoded based on that delegate. And the third step is to raise the event. To raise an event, we need a method that is responsible for that. Let me create that here. So in .NET, again, there is a convention. .NET Framework suggests that your event publisher methods should be protected. They should be virtual and void. And in terms of naming, they should start with the word on and then the name of the event, which is video encoded. So here in our encode method, once the encoding is finished here, we just need to call this method. And we're assuming this method will notify all the subscribers. So how do we notify subscribers? That is the responsibility of this method. We start with checking if there are any subscribers to this event. So we say video encoded. If it's not null, now we need to treat this as a method call. That is, imagine you're making a method call here. So video encoded. To call methods, we use brackets. Now this method, look at the parameters. Object source and event args. That's the signature that we defined earlier here, right? So what is the source of the event, or who is publishing the event? The current class or the current object, which is this. And do we want to send any additional data with the event? I would say for now, just to keep things simple, I would say no. So whenever you don't want to send any additional data, you use eventargs.empty. This is a static property of this class, which returns an instance of eventargs, which is empty. Later, in the next step, I will show you how we can send the actual video that was encoded. So let's review the steps we have done. First, we defined a delegate, which is here, which determines the shape or the signature of the method in the subscriber. Then the second step was to create an event based on that delegate. So we define the event here. We are saying this event is called video encoded. And whenever we raise that, we want a subscriber with a method that confirms to this delegate would be called. And the third step is raising the event. So in our encode method, once we're done, we call this method, which by convention should start with the word on and then the name of the event. And it should be protected, virtual, void, on video encoded. Inside this method, we'll look at that event. And if there are any subscribers there, which means it shouldn't be null, we're going to call them, passing the reference to video encoder and no additional data. Now, we're done here. Let's go ahead and create a couple of subscribers. So I'm going to go to program here. Let me create a new class here. Mail service. So this class is responsible for sending an email once the video is encoded. Now, I told you that back in our video encoder, when we define this delegate, I said we need a method that confirms with that signature in the subscribers. That method should be void and have these two parameters. So let's go ahead in our program CS here, in our mail service, create a method. This is the event handler. So that method should be void. We're going to call it on video encoded. It should have two parameters, object source, event args, E. Right? Now in this case, we don't want to send an actual mail. So I just want to simulate that. So we want to write a message to the console. I'll show you a quick tip here. Just type CW. That's a code snippet. If you press tab, that just writes console.writeLine. It's a way for you to quickly write code. I have a course on Udemy called Visual Studio Tips and Tricks, or Double Your Coding Speed. And in that course, I teach you a lot of code snippets and various techniques to help you write code faster. So in case you're interested, the link is on the screen here. All right, let's move on. So when this method is called, we want to log a message to the console saying, okay, we are in mail service, sending an email, That's pretty much it. Now, what we need to do is to subscribe this mail service to the video encoded event of video encoder. So here in the main method, we have the video encoder, which is the publisher. So that's going to be the publisher. Let me create an instance of mail service, and this is going to be my subscriber, right? Now, before we call the encode method, we need to do the subscription. How do we do that? It's very simple. So you start with the publisher, video encoder dot look at this icon. That's an event, video encoded. So we are interested in that. Now the notation is we use the plus equal operator. That is to register a handler for that event. Who's the handler? This method in the mail service. This method in the mail service. So I put that here, mail service dot, where is that? On video encoded and semicolon. Now note that I'm not making a call to this method here. So I don't have brackets here. I just use the name of the method. And basically what that means is this is a reference or a pointer to that method. So video encoded event behind the scene is a list of pointers to methods. When the video encoder wants to publish that event, video encoded, it looks at that list here. Here we look at that list. And if it's not empty, that means someone has subscribed to that event, which means we have a pointer to an event handler method. And then we're going to call that like this. That's just the syntax in C#. So let's get back to our program CS. So note that, again, we need to do the subscription before calling the encode method. Otherwise, the subscriber wouldn't be notified about the event. Now, let's run the application and see what happens. So we got the encoding video, which comes from the publisher. And then our mail service was notified and is trying to send an email. Now, let's look at some more interesting stuff here. First of all, I want to move this class to a separate file. The slow way of doing that is to go here, copy these, and then go to Solution Explorer, create a new file, and paste. It's not a good way. What is a faster way? There is a plugin called ReSharper, which is one of my absolute favorite plugins for Visual Studio. With ReSharper, you get this icon here. And see, it's suggesting to move this to another file. All you do is you put the cursor here on the class name, and then press Alt and Enter. And again, you get the suggestions here. Then press Enter. That's it. ReSharper moved that mail service class to a separate file, which is mail service, and added that to my solution here. So ReSharper really speeds up your coding. Again, I explained this stuff in my Visual Studio course on Udemy. So in case you're interested, have a look at that course and you're going to love it. Back in our program, now let's create a subscriber that is responsible for sending a text message. So I'm going to create another class saying message service. And again, we want an event handler method here. What is the signature of that method? Should be public void on video encoded. The first parameter should be object source, and the second should be event args. Again, we want to simulate a texting scenario. So just use CW, console.writeLine, press tab. There you go. So we are in message service now, sending a text message. And then I go here, Alt and enter, move that class to a separate file. Now we can press Control and hyphen to get back to where we were, which is the program class. So similarly, with that publisher and this subscriber, now we can add a new subscriber. Var message service equals new message service. So here's another subscriber. By the way, this comments is purely for educational purpose. I'm not suggesting you to write comments like that in your production code. Okay, so we've got an instance of the message service. We need to subscribe to the event, just like before. So who's the publisher? The video encoder. What event are we interested in? Video encoded. How do we subscribe? Plus equal. Now message service dot on video encoded. And again, I'm not making a method call, so there are no brackets here. Just a reference or pointer. Let's run the application again. Look, we got the encoding video message, which comes from the video encoder. Then mail service was notified. It's trying to send an email. And also message service was notified. And here it's trying to send a text message. Now, the beauty of this approach is when I created a new subscriber, which was message service, did I change anything in the video encoder? Let's go here. My video encoder is exactly the same. I didn't even make one line change. And that's what I was telling you in the slides earlier. So with events, you can create a publisher and you can add subscribers without changing the publisher. So this code doesn't need recompilation and doesn't need to be redeployed. And basically I can extend the application, add more capabilities by simply creating a new class, like in this case, message service. Tomorrow we can have a new class, call it, I don't know, pager service, that sends a notification using a pager, and nothing else would be affected. Now, take a look at the video encoder here. Here we have a delegate, which actually is a reference to a method or the event handler. That method should be void and with these two parameters. Now we want to send a reference to the video so the subscriber knows which video we encoded. To do that, instead of using event args, we need a custom class. That custom class should derive from event args and include any additional data that we would like to send to our subscribers. So let's go ahead and create that. I go here. I call it video event args because it's a class that contains the data about the video that was encoded. So it should derive from event args. Here we need to create a property that determines the video that was encoded. So quick way of writing that is you type prop and then press tab. This is a code snippet. So now I specify the return type, which is video, and the name. I press tab again and enter. That's it. So now we can change our delegate here. Instead of sending event args, we send video event args. Which means here, see, we got an error because when we're publishing an event, we're sending event args.empty, whereas our delegate now expects a video event args object. So I'm going to go ahead and modify this. We need to instantiate a video event args. And we also need to send the video. Video equals, but where is the video? We don't have it here. But look, in the encode video, in the encode method, when we encode the video here, we have a reference to the video object. So we can simply pass that object to this method. And of course, we need to go ahead and change this. But with ReSharper, I can just press Alt and Enter. And see, ReSharper is suggesting to add that video parameter to this method. So I just go ahead. And there you go. Now in the event publisher method, we've got a reference to the video. And I can just put that here. So with this change, now our publisher is going to send some additional data, which is encapsulated in that class, video event args. And there we'll have a reference to the video that was encoded. Now let's go to mail service. We need to change this method to comply with that delegate. So instead of event args, we want video event args. All right. And then now what we can do here is we can just we can output the title of the video. So I would say we've got the video object here, the title. We need to make the same change in message service. Now a quick way to find that class instead of going in the tabs or in the Solution Explorer is just with ReSharper type Control-T and then type message service. There you go. We are in that class now. So I'm going to go here and change this to video event args. And when outputting the message, I'm also going to add args.video.title. That's it. Let's compile and run the application with Control and F5. Okay, note that here, when mail service was notified, now we got the title of the video. So this is a way to pass data about the events that happened. Okay, the next step is to show you a simpler way to achieve the same thing with writing less code. So let's go to our video encoder, which is the publisher. See, we created this delegate here and specified these parameters as the arguments of the event handler method. Now, what they have done in .NET, I think it came with .NET Framework version 2.0 or 3.0. To make our life easier, they said, okay, we don't have to go and create a new delegate every time we want to declare an event. So in .NET, they have a delegate type, which is called event handler. And it comes in two forms. One is just a normal form and one is a generic form, which looks like this. What this means is they have done the hard work, so we can use that delegate instead of creating our own. Which means in this case, when we are declaring that event, instead of creating a custom delegate like that, we can just use the event handler delegate. Note the icon here. I think it's suitcase. Looks like we are delegating it to, I don't know, what is it called in English? Solicitor, lawyer, I don't know. So that event handler type is generic, as you see here. Now, what do we want to send as additional data with the event? Video event args. Now that basically is exactly equivalent to this. So we don't have to create a delegate explicitly. We can just use this class here, which is a delegate. So I get rid of this. Now, if you wanted to publish an event without sending any additional data, instead of using the generic form like this, we could just use the normal form like this. video encoded. Now, this is complaining because of the duplicate name. Let's just use video encoding. In that case, that means a method that gets object source as the first parameter and event args as the second parameter. Now, we don't really need it here. Okay, with that change, let's compile the application and run it. Everything working as before. Well, I hope at this point you have a good and in-depth understanding of event and delegate and how they help building loosely coupled applications. You saw how we can use events to make our applications extensible. And you also saw how to create a delegate and an event, as well as raising and subscribing to events. You also saw how we can use the event handler delegate that comes in the .NET framework, which saves us from creating our own delegate. So that delegate keyword that you saw earlier, I just wrote it because I wanted you to know what's exactly happening behind the scene. That came in the first version of .NET. But then this event handler class came, or delegate came, and we don't really need to create our own delegate. Honestly, I haven't seen a use case for that over the past, 12 years of me coding in .NET. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.